Hi there, welcome back to the series of podcasts all about virtualization and the SMB. And with me today I've got a guy, his name's Stu McHugh. And I first met Stu, I think it would have been at the London VMware user group, and we've kind of been in touch ever since, really. Stu, can you say hi to everybody listening in and watching today?
Hi everyone, my name's Stu McHugh. Thanks for having me on, Mike.
You're welcome. And the focus today is going to be about sort of virtual desktops end of virtualization rather than server consolidation. So that's our theme, if you like. But I wanted to ask you first, Stu, can you just give us like a thumbnail sketch of the organization you work for and how virtual desktops has sort of come on the scene? Just give us a little bit of a feel for you and the business that you're working in.
Yeah, so I work in a legal firm. We're based in London. However, we have global offices. So we have offices in the US, Hong Kong, and Asia. We have some around Europe as well, in Italy, and Switzerland. And we're about around about 750 users. So we fit into the VMware's SMB sort of catchment. And we were starting to look at VDI and put a proof of concept together. VDI came about just simply because of the next version of Windows that was out. I mean, a lot of people missed with Vista. We were still running XP, and we were looking at how to roll out Windows 7 and wanting to consider, do we go fat client? Do we go thin VDI? And yeah, that's why I got involved.
Sure. I mean, normally whenever VDI is discussed, it's associated with big companies and a large number of seats. And like you just said a moment ago, you've been testing VDI internally, and you mentioned things like the uptake of things like Vista and still being on an older platform. But what's specifically about virtual desktops was attractive to that usage case? I mean, why not just go out and buy some more physical PCs and do the way you've always done it?
Well, one of the key drivers for me, actually for the people, my clients, the people I work with, the lawyers. The lawyers are our core business, and they care about how efficient they can be. They have to have documents written, have access to documents, and with an ever-changing world, the quicker and easier they can do this, the better. Gone are the days where they have to carry big briefcases around full of papers. They just want a device where they can access everything. It's okay working at a desk and typing away, checking your emails, but then going up to a meeting, they want to carry on working. Getting on a train or a plane, they want to carry on where they left off. And VDI really gets the idea behind that. They fit together, they're married together very well. So they have a VDI session in the office, but when they get on the train, they can carry on. Or just going up to a meeting room, they don't have to undock their laptop, they don't have to mess around with anything like that. They can just log back into the same VDI session where they left off and just carry on working. And being efficient working like that is really key in the industry that I work in.
Sure. So I understand that you took VMware View out of the box and kicked the tires, as they say. Can you tell us a little bit about what that experience is like? What was the good? Was there any snafus? Was there anything that sort of sort of tripped you up, or was it plain sailing all the way through?
There's some good and bad. I guess it's like most things, really. The good is I'm familiar with the VMware product range and vSphere, so installing View was very straightforward. It installs into a Windows environment. There's some decent guides, and having like the View Manager installed was okay. Then the DMZ connection manager was okay as well. A few firewall rules here and there. The documentation was good. Community documentation is also very good. So getting up and running was I'll say again, was good. There were a few things though, like scaling. Is always one of those tricky things. It's difficult, I understand, to offer precise measures, but I do feel as though perhaps VMware can guide us a bit more. It's very tricky with, it depends if you're using SAN or local storage, what type of SAN, whether it's fiber or iSCSI, NASes, and all sorts of plethora of different types of things which are involved, which I understand why it makes the calculations very difficult. However, just some pointers, just if you're, just some guidelines that would guide you in the right direction rather than just nothing.
Sure, and I mean, it's not just all the external physical factors. The actual build of the OS inside the virtual machine is significant as well, because you're building for a hosted environment as opposed to having dedicated hardware when you install that OS directly to a desktop or a laptop. You've got to think about, do we really need all these bells and whistles switched on? Do they really enhance the user's experience or not? And that in itself is a piece of work, isn't it, to some degree?
Absolutely. One really useful document I did find was the VMware customization guide. And I'm not sure if many people realize this, but within the customization guide, obviously there's all the manual steps to make services on or off, and if they were automatically started, maybe you don't need them in a VDI environment. But within the PDF, there actually are some embedded scripts.
All right.
So you can, if you look at it in Adobe Reader, you'll notice that there are attachments to a PDF, and you can just simply download those scripts. They talk about them in the PDF, and you can just run them. So there's some really useful documentation, and having the OS almost configure itself as far as policies and services and registry settings, then that's really, really very useful and a big time saver.
Sure. So, I mean, in recent months and years, people have talked increasingly about layering the desktop, and that's talking about trying to separate the OS from the applications, from the user's persona or profile, whatever term you want to use. I wanted to ask, do you think that's a little bit excessive for an SMB style implementation of virtual desktops? Is it making it more complicated than it really needs to be? I mean, one of the early selling points of virtual desktops is that you just install software as is. You don't have to, do any special type of install as you would with the terminal services environment. The software gets installed natively, therefore you don't face the compatibility issues you might have had in, the legacy ways of delivering applications remotely. But what's your take on that? Are you for the layering, or do you think it makes life more complicated than it needs to be?
Well, keeping it simple is very, very important. I think you're in a situation in a VDI environment where you can pick and choose. So you can go in a traditional style, and let's say, for example, you have your Windows 7 build, you install Office, and perhaps a few other surrounding applications, but they are all built into the OS. You don't really need to worry about, in my opinion anyway, you don't really need to worry about virtualizing those applications. There's no layering really required, so long as you have your simple profiles for all your users. There are, however, some good examples where you do want to layer this virtualization platform, where you want to virtualize an application such as Acrobat Pro. For a company where I work, we're 700 people. Buying 700 licenses for Acrobat Pro can be very, very expensive. However, we don't need 700 licenses. People really need Acrobat Pro in their lives to write PDFs. However, not 7 hours of 8 hours of a day. They might need it at the end of a week or something like that. So within the VMware View solution, that they give you the ability to issue, if you like, an application for a day or a week, and then recall it again. So it's a much more efficient way of managing your licenses, and more cost effective ultimately.
Sure. When I've discussed this with customers, is that they often identify what they call an application tail, where at the top of the curve is the 10% of the applications that are used 100% of the time, and then the opposite end of the tail is 10% of the applications are hardly ever used, or even 90% of them. But there is this gap between those two, which is applications which are occasionally used they're actually quite important, but only to a certain subset of people who have a particular job function. And it does appear to be the case that those are the ones that are the low-hanging fruit, offer the most value in terms of application virtualization. I mean, I would say as well that something like ThinApp from VMware is, we say, is it too complicated, but ThinApp is 7 meg worth of loveliness, and it's a doddle really to use a ThinApp. It's not a complicated product. I mean, don't get me wrong, if you're a large corporate with very sophisticated requirements, it could step up to that mark as well. But it's not like a difficult thing. I sometimes think that virtual desktops is made complicated by some people, when actually the process itself is relatively straightforward if you take it in stages. If you try and take it all in one go, it can be a bit overwhelming. But if you just build on what you've got bit by bit, it's not that difficult to do. And maybe we're trying to make it look more complicated than it really is. Okay, well, we're on to our last question, which is a question I've been asking all the people in this particular series, which is there something you'd really like VMware to do for the SMB in the world of virtual desktops, or even application virtualization, as we touched upon it previously, that would make your life easier, or would make the uptake of the product easier, or would, I really wish VMware would do this with VMware View or with ThinApp? Is there anything in your kind of checklist of things that you want? If you ever meet the head honchos at VMware, you've got your list ready to ask them for, when will this come and when will that come?
Yeah, there's one of my key suggestions to make things a little more slick would be to have an appliance, so like a View Manager appliance. You can see VMware already taking steps to do this in the vSphere world with the Virtual Center appliance. So they must see the value in this. So my personal suggestion would also be to create a VMware View Manager appliance. Have an appliance on their website ready to download, and you download it, fire it up, and you're done. Don't get me wrong, View isn't that challenging to install, but to have a in-a-box solution, I think would really make it stand out in a busy crowd of VDI vendors. Also, when you're using View Manager, there are some tasks sometimes that you need to do, and this all points back to Virtual Center. So you have your View Manager and you have your Virtual Center server, and there's segregation in that. So having just one box do the whole job, having this appliance would just make things a bit tidier, a bit easier to follow.
Sure.
And speaking of following as well, the tasks that might have to be done when you're if you're carrying out a task, a maintenance task in View Manager, then it runs tasks within Virtual Center. So you need to flip screens and go to the other server. And they don't always tally up. On one side, View Managers ask Virtual Center to do something. And on Virtual Centers, it's doing a task, but you're not sure which task is what. Mm. When you're working in an environment like I do, where we've got maintenance windows, we've got ITIL to follow, we've got requests for change, things happening, and we have to fit into Windows. We need to know what's going on. We need to make sure that we can track how far along the process something is, and ETAs, and making sure we can finish a job in a certain time frame. Sure. We need to be able to look at a lot of detail of what's actually going on. So just some clearer, the tasks are there, the tasks are written in the task manager, but the detail sometimes just doesn't say exactly what's happening. So just to clean that up and put it in plainer English.
Sure. It sounds like what you'd like is a kind of bigger picture view of the entire job and what its status was, rather than the Virtual Center, which gives you every little task being listed. I guess the other difficult thing is status bars are the world over, aren't they? 10%, 50%, 99%. I think often in our world, what the status bar does is tell you that the thing is still working and still progressing. It's, in any product outside of VMware, the status bar doesn't always tell you how long it's going to take. And I've had situations with other vendors' products where it goes 1%, 50%, 99%, and then it stays on 99% for an hour. And so there's no real guideline in the status bar about how long that job will actually take. And I guess the other issue that all the vendors struggle with is a job is constructed out of a whole series of individual steps, and they can't know before the step actually starts how long it's perhaps going to take to execute. But I think what we're looking for is maybe a bigger picture view where you flick it from your desk and go, it's on 57%, come back and it's now on 89%, look up, it's on 9, well, now to go back and give it some focus now, because when we're looking at these status bars, very often, we go off and do something else, don't we? Because no one spends their life watching a status bar unless, they're extremely bored and lazy. Okay, well, thank you very much for chatting with me today, Stu. It's been great to hear your insights on virtual desktops and the SMB.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Mike.